Now that we have our base, we need to turn our block, we need to turn our what we have created from two-dimensional, see how it's really paper thin, into a three-dimensional object. So what we do for that is we come over to this push-pull tool. We click on the push-pull tool. Again, we have options. We're going to go to this top one, which is the push-pull. We come over and click on our design. See how those blue dots appear? I'm then going to pull it up. So I clicked and released before I moved the mouse, and then I lift it up and I type my number. The number I'm going to type is 30. So now what I've done is I've created a block. That block, oops, no, that's not what I wanted. If you make a mistake, you can always press Alt Backspace. What I want to do is I want to move this shape down a little bit. There we go. I can zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so this is my 3D block. I've turned it 3D. Now I've got to do some cutouts. In order to do the cutouts, I'm going to need my measurement tool again. So I come down to my tape measure. Now I'm going to mark out some of my cutouts. I'm going to go to that key point, click and come up, and I'm going to type 10 and press enter, and it gives me another guide point. I'm then going to come up to the top here. I'm going to click, I'm going to come across, I'll type 10, I'll press enter, and it gives me another guide point there. Now if I go to my line tool again, now that I'm remembering I'm wanting straight lines, I'll click on that guide point, make sure it says guide point, I'll drag across, make sure that line is green, type 40 and press enter. I'll come down to this guide point that I created, make sure it says guide point, click, come across, make sure the line is green, type 40, press enter. Now that I've done that, I actually want to get rid of these middle pieces. I want to get rid of that piece, and I also want to get rid of that piece. So again, I go back to my rubber tool. Be very careful that you only cross that one line. Be careful that I only cross that one line, and I got rid of those, and I'm left with the lines where I wanted it. Again, I'm orbiting by pressing down the scroll wheel using the center button of my mouse. Now what I need to do is go back to my pencil tool, and I want to join these lines up. So I want to join up that point and the end point of this line down here. See how it says end point? I'm going to do the same over here. It says end point. And I come down there until that says end point. I'm going to orbit around, so I'm looking at the other side of the block, and I'm going to do the same here from end point down to that end point, and that end point down to this end point. Now what that allows me to do, we orbit back again, what that does is it creates a cutout. Now I've drawn those lines in, I can now rub out the bits that I don't want using the eraser tool. Now you need to be careful that you don't rub over lines that you don't want to rub out. So be very careful which lines you rub out, and there we have it. I've cut out the angled face. I'm going to do another cutout. That cutout is a channel across the back of my block. So if I go from this end point, I click and I'm going to come 10 millimeters in. And I've got that point there. I go back to my pencil tool. I want to make sure I've got my line tool. I go to my guide point, and I'm going to go across this way. I'm going to make sure my line is green, and I'm going to type 40, because that's how long my block is, how wide my block is, sorry. Again, I'm using that center mouse button that's pushing down on the scroll wheel in order to be able to orbit around. Go back to my end point. This time I'm going to make sure the line is blue, and I'm just going to type 10. That will create a vertical line. You can see how this is already still attached. It's because this line didn't go to another line, it went to the middle of nowhere. The pencil tool was still attached, so I can just move my pencil around. This line I want it to be red. I type 10 again, press enter, and then I'll come up so that it's blue, type 10 again, and press enter. And see how, because that ended on that line, the line's no longer attached. So I want to do another line that goes across there, make sure the line is green, type 10, I'm not going to type 10, am I? Oh, it's thinking. I don't want to type 10, I want to type 40 and press enter. There we go. So now I've drawn those lines all the way across. Use that center button again to orbit around. And I'm going to orbit around to the other side of the block. Go to my end point here. Draw a line straight down. Type 10. Press enter. Again, the line is still attached. Make sure the line I'm drawing is red. Type 10. Press enter. And I'm going to go back up. And I can type 10 and press enter again, or I can just go to the end point. See how that line is still blue? And what I've done now is I've created the lines, or the outside edge for the cutout. I go back to my eraser tool, and I rub out that part of that line, and that part of that line. But what you can see is I can see inside my block. My block is now hollow. I need to close up the bottom of this channel. So if I go back to my pencil tool and I draw a line from the bottom of that point there, there's the bottom of this line, to the bottom of this line on this side. So I've drawn that line across and it's closed up that face. If I do the same on the other side, from that point there to that point there, it closes up the rest of it, and now my block is solid again. I can no longer see inside it. Now that I've done all of that work, so I don't lose any of it, I'm going to press save to save my work. It may take a few minutes to think about it, because it's saving a fair bit. And now it says save completed down here, so I know it's all done.